I will be very brief because Romain, his story will explain everything. I met Romain a couple of years ago. Actually, through research, he co-founded with his wife, Ludivine Verbogen, the 101 Genome Foundation. He will tell why he did that, because actually he's a lawyer, which means the interdisciplinary is here in person, the interdisciplinarity, and you will see that it's really not, well, easy. If you're driven by motivation and passion and a real purpose, you can do whatever you want. Again, this is the proof. Thank you, Romain, for taking the time to address our students.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And really honored and happy to be here with you today. I was stuck in Bangkok 3 days ago because of the war in Iran. I'm really happy to be here with you today. Although I also received really bad news about the health of my son 2 days ago. So I hope I will not be too emotional during this presentation. And I hope that it will be at least a bit inspiring for you. So as it was just said, I'm actually a lawyer. This is my formation. I do competition law applied in the field of telecommunication at the origin, and now I do more and more application in the field of pharmaceutical industry. With my wife, we created the 101 Genome Foundation. My wife is Ludivine Verbogen, who she's here. She has different affiliation, and she's mainly the vice president of the Radio Org, which is the umbrella patient association here in Belgium, and they do a fantastic work for the patient. So what happened? We are the parents of 3 children, and where our last child was born, it's Aurélien, we lost quite soon that he is a carrier of a rare disease, and it was a total shock. And we wanted to understand what happened with him, and we spent a lot of time with patient association. We realized that they don't understand everything. They were as lost as we were. And with the help of the Professor Guillaume Smith, who's working here in genetics, we did a discovery, and with this discovery, we decided to create the possibility for this discovery to emerge and create new drugs. And so the first idea was to create the 101 Genome Foundation, to have a legal body, because really often when you speak about research and really nice initiative, you're lacking really the fundamental part, which is the legal part. So we created first the legal part, which will allow us to deal with the data, which is always a difficult issue. And we created it with the support of the King Baudouin Foundation. On the top of that, we opened our first biobank, which is a place where we gather DNA, biological DNA. And after we create what we call the genomic cloud, which is a place where we transform the biological DNA into what we call digital DNA. So we do whole genome sequencing, and we gather the data from the patient on this genomic cloud. And on the top of that, we went back to the patient to ask them to join and to support our initiative. And we realized that the way the consent were gathered and managed was really suboptimal. So we created our own way, our own portal to manage the consent of the participant and to facilitate the interaction between the patient and the main investigator where they are in the world. So this is our story, and this is the story I will tell you today. So everything began with the birth of Aurélien, and we were extremely happy. And a few days later, we understood that he's sick. And he has a rare disease called Marfan syndrome disease, which is a rare disease, which is not so rare. Actually, you perhaps met several people in your life with a classical form of Marfan disease, which is a disorder caused by a pathologic affliction of the FBN1 gene, which is coding for the fibrillin 1. The FBN1 gene is coding for the fibrillin protein. And the fibrillin, this is something that you have everywhere in your body. That's do the kind of glue between all the cells in your body. And when you have this defection of this malfunction of this production of fibrillin and fibrillin 1, it alters all the different parts of your body. And so people with Marfan syndrome, they tend to be really tall, really thin, with a lot of dysmorphophobia, a lot of different affliction. And the main affliction is touching the heart and touching the aorta. And with person with Marfan syndrome, you can have dissection of the aorta which means death. And suddenly we discovered that there were plenty of Marfan people all over the world, and some of them are even quite famous, even if they don't say that they are Marfan people. And we realized, meeting Marfan people, that with Aurélien, it was totally another story. First of all, we are not Marfan ourselves. Neither my wife, neither myself are carrying a pathogenic variant on the BN1 gene, meaning that with Aurélien, what happened, it's a de novo spontaneous mutation at his birth, when it was conceived. There was a new variant on his genome, on the BN1 gene, that makes him really sad. So when we have this de novo apparition of Marfan syndrome, it's always often a different story. And Aurélien also had an affliction immediately to his mitral valve. And the mutation, specific mutation on the FBN1 gene was really located in a specific area of the FBN1 gene, which is between the exon 24 and 32. And with that, people who are harboring this are really poor life prognosis, with a life expectancy of 16 months. And it was 11 months when we realized that. So it was a total shock. And we had the help of Professor Guillaume Smith here, and spent a lot of time to help us to understand what we are talking about. And we were just lawyers, my wife and I, and so we love about biology. You remember the lecture that we had at school, and he really took a lot of time to explain us the nucleotide and the genomes and the complete genome and the exome and the coding part and the non-coding part of the genomes, and the fact that all of us, we are carrier of 3 million, a sequence of 3 million nucleotides, which makes that we are who we are. And that at 99% of the sequence, it's really identical for everybody in this room. But we have this 1% difference that makes that we are who we are. And this, it's really difficult to understand and to identify what are the pathological or what are the variants that have an impact on your phenotype and on your disease. And here is this little message that's quite important. When you have a variant, sometimes you can keep the gene is still able to convey the message that he has to carry, and it's still able to produce the protein that's supposed to produce. But sometimes the variant has really a strong effect on the message, and the message is lost. And when the message is lost, it's like with Aurélien, the problem begins. So what helps us today is that we have this kind of technological revolution, which is really strong, where we have the emergence of new machines, new sequencing machine that helps to digitalize the biological genome. So meaning that it helps to turn into a digital data, a biological data. And it's really important because at the beginning, when Aurélien was diagnosed, they were just doing the kind of one-by-one analysis of the gene. So it took a lot of time, and we lost a lot of time before being able to provide him with the good medicine and the drugs that he needed. And if we had that, we could have done this really faster. Nowadays, here at Erasmus, they are doing even better technology than this one. This one is what we call a short sequencing technology, where you are sequencing all the exome, meaning the coding part of the genome, but also you can sequence the non-coding part of the complete genome, and it's where you produce a WGS data, WGS file. And here at Erasmus, they are even working with what we call long read technology that helps to complement the short read technology. So with that, we realized also that the price were decreasing and that there are real competition in the field of sequencing machine technology, and there are more and more actors that bring a real pressure on the price and making that the price are cheaper and cheaper as of today. So today we're talking about genomes, complete all genomes in short sequencing at around 400 euros, something like that with bioinformatics. So it gives a lot of hope to understand more and more who we are and how the genome works and how the interaction between the genomes. Because what we realize is that in the classical approach of genetics, we were just looking for one gene, one effect. And now we understand more and more that each gene is part of a network of 20,000 genes, and they interact between each other. And this interaction that you need to understand to the kind of Rosetta Stone to decode completely the genome and understand its interaction. So I'm back 10 years back. So I received the diagnosis for Aurélien. I don't understand why he's sick. Guillaume explained me, okay, you have all this genetic story. And so I said, yeah, okay, I understand. He has a defect in his FBN gene. There's a specific mutation that we don't have. He has it. He's sick, but why is he sick? And I continue to read a lot of science. And one day I found this publication. And this publication, it's something called the Resilience Project. And in this Resilience Project, a group of researchers, they have access to around 600,000 genomes and exomes, and they decide to reanalyze them. And when they reanalyze those data, they discover a group of patients who were harboring pathogenical variant of rare disease that will cause death in the infancy, meaning that the people that identified this cohort should be dead, should be really sick, and were adults in a reasonably healthy condition. So with that, I go back to Guillaume, say, what is this story? Why those guys are sick, are supposed to be sick and are not sick? And there we discussed with Guillaume about what we call the modifier genes, which means the genes that in the network that we explained are able to interact and sometimes counteract with the effect of a pathological gene, meaning that sometimes we have a gene that is able to take the relay on a non-functional gene and make it functional. And so with that, we have some people who are natural carrier of the solution to the disease that they are having. So in this Resilience Project study, they identify this kind of mutation carrier. So before the diagnosis, my wife was not sleeping. After the diagnosis, I was not sleeping. So instead of sleeping, I did this. I decided to do by myself the Resilience Project study, especially on the FBN1 gene of that's called the disease response. And to do that, I used pathogenic database that's called UMD FBN1 that gather all the known pathogenic variant on the FBN1 gene. Took that on one side, we did old traditional Excel sheet. And on the other one, I took an extract of something called GNOMAD, and there are bioinformaticians in the room, they really know GNOMAD, which is a really huge database created by Daniel MacArthur that allows to explore the genome of people that was collected in in classical conditions for treatment of cancer, for example. And there, doing that, I found an intersection, meaning that I found a lot of people who were carrier of pathogenic variant of the FBN1 gene. So I called Guillaume, say, Guillaume, there are a lot of people with this. It means that there could be something to cure people with Marfan. I told me, yes, for now, that's for sure. But you know, Marfan patient, there's a high resilience, there are high penetrance of the disease. There are a lot of people who are actually Marfan and they don't know that. And so what will be striking, and if you find in this interaction, people carrying the same kind of pathogenic variant as Aurélien, meaning people who should have this neonatal form of the Marfan syndrome, which with this really poor life expectancy. So I went back to my Excel sheet, and there I found 24 carrier in the GNOMAD database, people who were supposed to be as sick as my child and were actually adults living a reasonably healthy life. So it was a total shock. And so we decided, and years later, this observation that I did was publicated by another group that did the same observation, but we did it before. So what it means? It means that somewhere around the 20,000 genes in the complete genomes, there are other genes, perhaps one, perhaps more, that are able to counteract even the more deleterious effect of a pathogenic variant under the FBN1 genes. And what we wanted to do was to re-identify people carrying those variants. And it's why we created 101 Genome Foundation, because the rules, the legal rules of the GNOMAD don't allow you to go back to the carrier and don't allow you to do the link between the different variants that you see within the genome of those people. So we decided to create the 101 Genome Foundation with the support of the King Baudouin Foundation. what allows us to have tax deductibility almost everywhere in the world. And it's really, really helpful because everything that we did as of today, we did it thanks to philanthropy. So if one day you want to do some philanthropic action, please support One Genome Foundation. It helps us a lot. And here, the module that you can use to do a donation, tax deductible. And with that, we wrote a white paper where we explained the discovery, the different paths of discovery, and what we wanted to do, and why we believe that if we were able to gather 100 plus 1 genome of patients with Marfan syndrome, with people really severely affected like Aurélien, and on the other side, people not so severely affected, we will be able to try to identify and track and go to the quest for the modifier genes that should work in the context of Marfan. So it was not difficult to convince the scientific in the Marfan community about the meaningfulness of this quest, because most of them, because of the career they had, that with Marfan syndrome, there's something really, really odd, really special, and there should be other genes around the FBN1 gene that are able to modulate the disease. So we had Catherine Boileau, Professor Jourdeau, and the Pape, who the person who discovered and created the invent, I would say, the Marfan criteria in the end. And of course, Bart Doris and Guillaume and Julie that joined our scientific committee. And with them, we created and we designed the GEMS quest, the GEMS study. And so the GEMS study, the idea is to, as I told you, to identify really old people carrying a FBN1 gene who are not so sick, and on the other part of the spectrum, young people carrying FBN1 gene who are pathogenic variation on the gene who are quite sick. And so we decided to create this cohort, and going back to the database with the mutation of the well-known mutation of the FBN1 gene, we decided to identify the specific mutation where we see a lot of occurrence. Really, a lot of people were carrying all over the world this mutation, and so we went for the C.774054 T2C variant, and we decided to try to create all the conditions to conduct the research. So we created our biobank. I told you that. We did it actually here with the Erasmus Hospital. And after we created the genomic cloud with the support of Geraldine van der Oara, who was working at the MIT at the time, and colleagues. And with that, we decided to create, we understood during consultation with Aurélien, we were there for checking his heart. And at one point, the examiner told us, oh, by the way, there is a research in the US. They're trying to investigate about children like your son. You should sign, you should join the research. We said, yes, of course, we will do it. And so we signed a piece of paper. Aurélien was really tiny. We put him back in the trolley. It was snowing. We went back in the car. We put everything back in the car. I left the parking and asked my wife, oh, do you have this piece of paper? She told me, oh, no, I don't. You don't? No, I don't. So we lost it. So we received a piece of paper, we read everything, the person was explaining everything, so we were really convinced that it was a good idea, and we lost this piece of paper. And after we began the GEMS study, we realized all the journey that this piece of paper had to follow to be in front of us and present in front of us, because of course the main investigator was not the person that we met, he was somebody in Texas, and he has to pass his research by his own ethical committee, and to us, when it was cleared, he can spread it with his colleague all over the world. And so he went here in it was at UDEF. And at UDEF, before being able to show us this piece of paper, it also had to receive and be endorsed by an ethical committee there, so twice. And each time you do that, and for the field of rare disease, you imagine that you need to have the endorsement of hundreds, this is exponential, of ethical committee for the same research that was already accepted by a first ethical committee. And after we were put in place of the position of this person, the examinator, who's trying to collect the consent. And so we remember the person trying to explain that as clearly as possible. At the same time, we're thinking about something else. And it was really not optimal neither for this person. And talking with about you, we realized that sometimes the person collecting the consent, sometimes they subjectively feel that the person in front of them, even if they say, yes, I want to join the study, they say they want to join, but I'm really not sure they really understood that they really want to join, so I don't put them in the study. So this is not an optimal scenario for the participants, not an optimal scenario for the person collecting the consent, and not at all an optimal scenario for the research and the main investigator. So we decide to create something else and to create a direct link between the potential participant and the main investigator. And so we create a portal that where we hope that it will help to solve all these different difficulty. So we launched the portal. The portal is fully functional since several years now. It works in several languages. You can do it for yourself, for your children. And there is a presentation of the study. And at the core of the system, at the heart of the system, there is a kind of quiz mechanism that allow you to verify that you will understand what you are consenting for. So this is for yourself. You understand what you do. And it also objectifies the comprehension that you have from the research. And so there's not a subjective person in front of you say, no, it doesn't understand. And what's really important is that the patient, they can take the time to do it and to feel it. So this is something that's really appreciated by the patient. So when it's done, you have the typical ticking the box solution. And after we have a verification, authentication of the signature. And when the consent is signed, it's countersigned by, this time it's Bart Lewis in Antwerp, who's countersigning the consent. And when it's done, it launches all the sequence that we created, the bioflow. It allows us to send to the participant a kit, a saliva collector kit that you receive by the post. In Europe, it's the post. When we go out of Europe, we use FedEx. And they receive the kit at home, they split in the saliva kit, they register the saliva kit through the portal, and they send back the saliva kit to the used Ghent laboratory, where the DNA is extracted. And when the biological DNA is extracted, we put it in 5 aliquots. There are 4 aliquots that are going in our biological biobank, and 1 aliquot that's sent to our partner for the sequencing and to be placed on the genomic load of the 101 Genome Foundation. After that, the participant can still manage his data. This is really important for us. This is where he can always find back the consent that he signed, not the piece of paper that we lost. And he can really withdraw it, not sending a kind of recommandé on every Tuesday. And he is also invited to join other studies that are linked with his disease. He can also apply all the rights that is granted to him by the GDPR, which is really important. And to build this infrastructure, we will be guided by ethical principle. So now the solution has been endorsed by several ethical committees that really show that this is something that should be and serve as an example. And we can tell you that a lot of participants, when they use that, when after they have to go back to the traditional paper sign way with the doctor looking at you, awaiting you to sign, they feel it like they say even kind of form of violence. So the solution that we create, it's a dynamic solution to gather the consent. It's a BFAS dynamic consent solution. It's actually the kind of solution that are endorsed by the World Health Organization and the solution that they promote in the field of the genome especially. Why? Because in the field of the genome, as I told you, it's really important with time to go back and to be able to recontact the participant to understand the evolution of the genome. So we were invited by the Belgian states to present this thing during the EU Belgian presidency. It was quite extraordinary. And as of today, there are more than 227 participants from all over the world. So meaning that you have people, of course, from Belgium, France, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Slovakia, Sweden, Norway, Australia, Spain, the UK, Denmark, Switzerland, the USA, Australia, Mexico, Argentina, New Zealand, and even Malaysia. So in the field of rare disease, it's really important to have this kind of leverage, global leverage, because rare disease patients are rare. And it's not easy to find them. They are everywhere in the world. And it's not easy to find them. So you understood that we were doing that only with philanthropy, with dedication of people benevolent often. And so we try to make it as professional as possible. And so we have this typical journey of a kit, saliva kit, between the moment somebody decide to create a profile and begin to take the time to process and gather and sign its consent and the consent to be countersigned on the other side. The time it takes to receive the saliva kit, the time it takes to have the saliva kit back and the time where the UZGant laboratory decided to take the time to extract the genomic information from the biblical DNA, and you can see that this is actually where it takes the most longer time. So some people they have been able to complete the complete journey in less than 13 days, and other it takes more than 271 days. The idea is not to be really fast, but it's to be as effective as possible. And if people want to take time, they take time. At the end of the day, what we want is to have the data. So as of today, the main participants are coming from Spain, and after from France, and after from the Netherlands. In Belgium, perhaps we have a bit less. What's really important is that we are doing that to discover people, old men. So as you understood, it's quite difficult to find old person harboring FPN1 pathogenic variant, and even more difficult to identify old men because most of the time they die before being old. And doing that, we discover one person who was unaware that he had his Marfan syndrome disease, and he was actually a carrier of the specific variant that we are looking for. And he was reasonably healthy until really, really long time in his lifetime, meaning that we are just extremely good candidate to identify the modifier gene. Here there is another quite extraordinary story, but I will let that for another time. And so we have this agreement with Malaysia, and so we have a lot of Malaysian participants joining us, which we think quite amazing. And we are writing a paper about this story about the portal, the creation of the portal, and what we do with the data. But so as of today, we have more than 600 NGS data. So meaning that we have more than 220 whole genome on our genomic cloud, plus more than 100 exome that we receive from a research group, a French research group, and more than 300 genes that we receive from a Belgian group of research. And so we gather everything on our genomic cloud, and we allow bioinformatics researchers to work on that. So doing that, we realized that so I know we have a lot of requests coming from the UK, from the US, to access our database, because apparently it's one of the largest genomic database of patients with Marfan syndrome. And doing that, we realized that the role that you decide to create to be a kind of data intermediary between the patient association and the researcher was really not understood. Each time we ask for funding at the European level, they say, we don't understand the role of the patient organization. We don't understand why they are providing the data. And so often we are not funded, which is quite great. And so they really want patient association to do awareness, to go and cry and tell that story, and sorry, sad. But you can also come with kind of proactive and trying to create something as we do. And so we realized that you have a kind of in between those two, and we had a kind of statute that was not recognized by legal law. And it changed. It changed when at the European level we understood that the GDPR was a bit difficult to implement, and it prevents a lot research to grow in Europe since its adoption. And so they try to recalibrate a bit the game. And so they create what they call the Data Governance Act. And in the Data Governance Act, they create a new kind of legal body, what they call the Data Altruism Organization. And what is the Data Altruism Organization? It's an organization, non-profit, that's placed in between data holder, the patient, and data seeker, the researcher. And so now, in the regulatory European legal framework, you have the recognition of the Data Altruism Organization, which is what we were even before it was invented and created. And we are actually the first to be recognized as the Data Altruism Organization. So the first one to be recognized as the Data Altruism Organization for genomic data in Europe is the 101 Genome Foundation, which is quite crazy once again. So with the data, what we decide to do, we decide to use them with bioinformatic tools. And the first bioinformatic tool that we create, it's called, I will be fast on this one. We created here with Guillaume Smith, and the idea was to simplify the story of the categorization of the pathogenicity of a variant, to be sure that you are in front of a pathogenic variant and not in a variant where you don't really know what will happen with the what will be the consequence of the migration. So we use it a bit like a padlock. We try each and every combination possible on the FBN1 gene, and we create a tool that allows to do it. It was a wonderful idea, and we did it only for FBN1. But while we were doing that, Google decided to do the same thing, but for the complete genome and for each and every gene in the genome, and they create what's called alpha missense. And so we have our little tiny alpha missense only for one gene when they're for the complete one. But we can say that our solution can even provide something when alpha missense are missing. So it's a good complement to it. So the tool it's online. It's used by several labs working on the field of Marfan. If you want to test it, you're able to use it. Doing that, we realized that there was a specific hold of a specific amino acid that was not foreseen and understood. And so it helped a lot. It was kind of side effect of research. So there's a publication about this one. And the main thing, because we were looking for these modifier genes, we decided to use AI tools to try to identify the correlation, the link in the network of genes that are interacting with the FBN1 genes. And for that, we're still working with Professor Tom Leonard and Nassim. And so with them, we allow them to implement all the AI tools directly on our genomic cloud. So the data is there and their tools are there. And it allows them to conduct their research. And they believe that they found modifier genes with this bioinformatic path. So this is interesting, but it needs to be confirmed by biological data and everything. But it gives a lot of hope to explore new solutions and potentially new drugs that will be able to replicate the effect of the genes that we identify as being modifier of the FBN1 gene. So let's see what will happen with that. On the top of it, we realized that there were a lot of issues for the measurement of the aorta with Marfan patient, and it's really a burden for when you take care of the patient, but it's also a burden when you try to identify the effectiveness of a new drug. And when you try to do drug repurposing, there are a lot of questions about the effectiveness of the disease of the drugs only because it was difficult to collect the data. So we understand that once again with AI, we were able to try to create new tools that will try to objectify the measurement of the aorta. And so we created AORAM with Loris, and we have a really nice tool that helps to objectify that. So what's next for the 101 Genome Foundation? The idea is to go global. So the Marfan US Foundation invites us to go global and to have a kind of advertising at the global level, which we have not done yet, but because we don't have the funding to do that. Imagine that thousands of people will try to join us. We don't know how we will pay for that. There's a really nice video, but it will be for next time. And here, the idea now is to try to explore and find a drug, because with the signals that we saw with the other modifier genes, we can see that it could go in the direction of a drug repurposing. So we're exploring that. And the idea now is to extend our model to other rare disease. We are talking about Mickey disease and the Lois disease, where we find a way. And as a conclusion, the idea for the 101 Genome Foundation was to complement the traditional in vivo and in vitro way of research. We don't want to replace that, but we wanted to add a third and explore a third path, which would be the in silico path, and to facilitate this in silico exploration. I believe that we did it. And doing that, because we were convinced that Aurelia will have a short life expectancy, we didn't dream to do something that will help him, but we wanted to make something that makes sense. So we create something which each of the different pillars is reusable for other rare disease and less rare disease. And so as of today, as I told you, we are trying to deploy it in the field of other rare diseases. Now we are seeking to have 303 genomes, not 101. And to extend, we are working with our team who's there. And last thing, we are still gathering our resource thanks to philanthropy, and we organize a theater play on the 11th of April at Flagey. And if you want to know more about what we do and the different research that we do, there will be two presentations, one at 4 and the other one at 8. And between the two presentations, the different researchers who are working with us will be there. And you know, but Marie Vareille, who wrote a book that was really well sold all over the world, I think. A book called Syndrome du Spaghetti about the Marfan syndrome disease, and she will be present on the event. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for. Yeah, the last point. This is Aurélien, the Belgian football player, and Bart. And so Aurélien is 10 now. He's doing as good as possible. He has a lot of challenging to survive and overcome. And so we hope he will continue to be as happy as he is today. Thank you very much for your time.
Are there any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to say how I admire your dedication to your family. It's like the enormous amount of work to tell a story. But I also have an idea for you. There are already companies that do collect genetic testing, as for example, 3&D.
Yeah.
And all those, they already have those kits that they established, they collect exactly for that purpose. So if we could perhaps collaborate, and they have extensive, enormous data now already, they've been doing it for 20 years. So perhaps you could collaborate with them, with the universities to, and the consents already signed.
We are exactly the anti-23andMe. And we built our solution looking at the difficulties that 23andMe was facing. And for example, the consent was a difficulty for 23andMe. 23andMe at the very beginning didn't foresee that the data that he was collecting and sending just the recreational tests will be useful for the pharma company later. But they decide to sell it anyway. And so at one point, there's a discrepancy between the consent that they have to perform the recreative test and the possibility to sell it to the pharma company. And the pharma company, they needed to be able to go back to the patient to collect extra data. So it's why we created our solution to have this dynamic dimension. And so we are actually, I would say, the anti-23andMe. But no, 23andMe corrected that, and it's true that its system works better. And I don't say that it's bad. I think it's really better, and they learn. But as you get it in Europe, it's really more kind of non-profit approach, and we have all this GDPR universe. And with the 23andMe solution, this is something that's perhaps more working in the US capacity. There are other companies globally. And for example, why the Marfan US Foundation is coming to us to ask us to do that and not to work with 23andMe. Other diseases, they did it. And they try to work with 23andMe, but they reach some difficulties. And the Marfan US company said, okay, a foundation, they went to us saying, okay, you are based in Europe. You have to deal every day with the GDPR and all this regulatory framework. So actually, it's a better place to place the data. They actually use this as an advantage that you are put in this situation. So yes, it's really a good question. Thank you very much.
Are there other questions? I guess but it's probably needless to say, but the Généré Award, Guillaume has applied for it.
So this is
sorry.
No, actually, Généré Fund is funding us, but we never received the award. But they support us. This is a story for another time. But, yeah, we received a part of their support. Yes.
Any other questions? '23andMe, were they bankrupt?
They weren't.
Yeah, I thought. So maybe there's an opportunity to them.
There are many companies like that, and some that are specializing specifically on diseases as well, not just therapies.
No, indeed, because I think 23andMe, that was exactly their model, and it didn't. Yeah.
Before they started.
They're still struggling to find the real model that will help them to generate funding. And it's the same actually with the supporting machine also, and all the all these wonderful AI tool that we created to interpret the variation of the variant. Nobody as far has really found the solution to try to do it. There was a really interesting case decided by the European Commission, and it was actually the first case in AI. It's a case that deals with something called GRAIL. And GRAIL, it's G-R-E-I-L. It's an AI tool that was embodied in Illumina sequencing machine. And that helps to accelerate the identification of, in short, of potential cancer. And the European Commission was not really aware that they were taking position for the first time on AI on this case. And they decide to prevent Illumina to integrate the AI tool in their solution to their portal. And it led to a really incredible story where Illumina has to stop the acquisition of GRAIL. And at a later stage, the Court of Justice 2 years ago really said that the European Commission erred and really didn't respect EU law preventing this to happen. And now the bad is done. It's too late. So they prevented the emergency of an ecosystem with a portal that will have help. Okay, firstly with GRAIL, but after it will have been like the App Store. It will allow other applications to have a way to monetize their solution and their tools. And so this is a real trick. I understood that some people from Solvay in the room. I know there's a lot of attention on this world, but there's still a model that's not really defined to try to generate value on all this. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's indeed inspiring how unmet medical need, and the motivation to fight for the right of the patient drives people into creating things that no one does on itself. Tom Leenaerts is a professor at Polytech. Jon Smit is here at the Faculty of Medicine. You are a lawyer and now a bioinformatician, a geneticist. It's amazing how unmet need drives people to do things that were unimaginable. I can only say thank you so much. I wish you all the best for the coming periods. Thank you for the emotion you showed, because this is what it's all about. Nobody chooses to become a patient or a caregiver, but if you are, please, and this is really, I hope, the message that you gain whatever background you have, one day you will become a carer or a patient. You can do much more than you think you can. And thank you so much for this, under these certain circumstances, still being here to address our students. Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.